My name is Claire Reed. I'm 35 years old and I work for a non-profit organisation. I thought I had finally reached a point in life where my family could at least give me peace, not more wounds. And then my phone buzzed. At first, I smiled because the name on the screen was Ava. I thought maybe it was a picture of her dress or some silly joke. But when I opened it all I saw were a few plain words that landed like a blade. It said, "We had to cut the guest list. Hope you understand. Love you." I read it again and then again, waiting for some different meaning to show itself. But the words didn't change. They sat there, small and cold, and the longer I looked at them, the heavier they became. Tough cuts, I whispered. Except I wasn't some distant cousin who only showed up every few years. I wasn't an old neighbour or a family friend from long ago. I was her sister. The word echoed in my head like it was trying to remind me who I was supposed to be. Sister. Not extra, not optional. Sister. My throat tightened. I set the phone down, but the memory of it followed me into the dark behind my eyes. I saw Ava as a little girl, shivering with a fever clinging to me as I carried her from her bed to the couch. I was 12 and my arms ached, but I told her I would never leave her. I stayed by her side that whole night, changing the damp cloth on her forehead, listening to every breath. That promise lived in me for years, and now a single text had wiped it away. I picked the phone up again, hoping I had read it wrong, but the words were the same. Guest list finalised. Tough cuts. I knew her wedding was set to host more than 100 people. So who exactly had been cut? Not the co-workers she'd only known a year. Not the distant cousins we barely spoke to. No, it was me. A chill spread through my chest, a mix of disbelief and anger. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe she thought I wouldn't mind that I'd be too busy. Maybe she assumed I would forgive her later the way I always did. But those excuses felt thinner than air. The truth was simple. She had chosen a wedding without me in it. I whispered out loud, she cut me out. My own sister cut me out. The sound of my own voice startled me, but saying it made it real. I thought about all the times I had been there for her, helping her move apartments, covering part of her rent when she lost her job, listening for hours when her heart was broken. I had been steady, reliable, the one who could be counted on. And now, steadiness was the very reason I was disposable. Steady things don't ask to be invited. They just keep carrying. My chest burned. I pressed my hands to my eyes, but the tears still came salty and hot. I wiped them away quickly, like no one was allowed to see, even though no one was there. It felt like my whole life in this family had been teaching me to swallow hurt and smile through it, but this cut was too deep, too close to the bone. I thought about calling my mother. Some part of me still wanted to hear her say it wasn't true, that there had been some mistake. But another part of me already knew the sigh I would hear, that light sound she makes before telling me not to take things so seriously. I hesitated, torn between protecting myself from that sound and demanding the truth anyway. I looked back at the message, the one that had turned my day upside down, and I saw the final words again. Love you. I wanted to believe it. I really did. But love does not cross out a sister's name. Love doesn't hide behind the word cuts and expect the wound to heal on its own. Love calls, love explains, love pries. And I could not find that love in her message, no matter how I turned it over in my hands. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the last of the daylight stretching across the floor. I thought about the patience I had carried for years, the way I had always convinced myself that waiting and understanding would one day be returned to me. But now I could see it clearly. Patience had been a bridge leading nowhere. And here I was, standing on that empty span. The only choice left was to step off and find my own road. I didn't know yet where that road would take me, but I knew one thing for certain. The first step would not be back toward a door that had just been closed in my face. I told myself I would not step back toward the door Ava had closed. But even as I said it, my hand was already reaching for my phone. If I could not turn to her, maybe my mother would tell me there had been some mistake. I pressed call, She answered on the second ring, her voice warm as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, sweetheart, what's up?" My chest tightened. I could not pretend. I said, "Mum, I just got a message from Ava. She says I am not on the guest list. Tell me this isn't true." For a moment there was nothing but silence, and that silence told me everything. Then came the sigh. That sigh I knew too well, the one that meant I was being unreasonable again. "Oh, honey," she said at last, "don't make this into a big deal. It's just a wedding." The words fell into me like stones. Just a wedding. I swallowed hard. "Mum, I'm her sister. How can I not be invited to my own sister's wedding?" She made a little clicking sound with her tongue, the one that always made me feel like a stubborn child. Claire. They had to keep the list small. Weddings are expensive. It's one day. You wouldn't mind missing it? My hand shook. Wouldn't mind I saw Ava's post. She invited more than 100 people, but not me. I felt my voice rising. "Mum, I've been there for her through everything. I helped her move. I covered her rent when she lost her job. I sat with her through every breakup. And now, I'm not worth a chair on her special day." She gave a small laugh that was not laughter at all. "Stop being dramatic, Claire. You're overreacting. It's just a wedding." Her words echoed until they blurred with memories I had tried to bury. I was 12 again, standing in our living room, holding up a ribbon I had won at the science fair. My face glowed with pride, waiting for her to beam back at me. Instead, she smiled thinly and said, "That's nice, Claire. Maybe next time you can aim even higher." The ribbon wilted in my hand. Years later, I saw Ava at the kitchen table crying over a failed test. Her paper was crumpled, her sobs loud. Mum rushed to her side, pulled her close, kissed her hair. "Oh, sweetheart, it's all right. We'll help you. You did your best." I watched from the hallway, silent, feeling the difference cut deep. My achievements were always a stepping stone to something better. Ava's failures were always forgiven. The memories faded, but the feeling stayed. On the phone, I tried once more. "Mum," I said, my voice trembling, "all these years I've carried her through storms. And now, none of that matters." The only answer was another sigh, heavy, tired, as if I was wasting her time. In that breath, I heard the truth. This was not about one wedding. This was the pattern of my life. Ava was the fragile one protected no matter what. I was the strong one expected to carry and endure. And now I was not even worth an invitation. I felt my chest tighten until I could hardly breathe. I pulled the phone away, staring at the call screen, still hearing her words. "It's just a wedding." My thumb pressed the red button and the line went dead. I sat in silence, the world around me blurring, my eyes burning. Tears spilled before I could stop them. All these years I had been the one who held them up. Now I was disposable, less than a guest in my own family. My heart sank to the very bottom, and for the first time in a long time I felt truly alone. I sat there in the silence after hanging up on my mother, my phone face down on the table, my hand shaking in my lap. I thought about what she had said, how she had brushed me aside, as if my pain meant nothing. Less than a guest at my own sister's wedding. The words rolled in my head like thunder, and then came the question I had tried to avoid for years. How did we get here? How did I become the outsider in my own family? I closed my eyes and the memories rose without asking. My work, the life I had chosen, was never enough for them. I had built a career in community projects, organising shelters, helping families who had nothing. I loved the work, even when it left me tired because it mattered. But to my parents, it was nothing more than wasted effort. They called it busybody work, as if caring for people was shameful. I can still hear my father's voice saying, "You should find a real job in an office, a job that pays well, a job that shows stability." My mother would nod along and glance toward Ava as if she were the example to follow. Ava had done exactly what they wanted. She had taken an office job, a desk in a building with air conditioning, and a boss who liked her polite smile. They called her the good daughter, the one who listened, the one who followed instructions. And me, I was the stubborn one, the one who could never be satisfied. That was the story they told. I remember a dinner years ago. I came home excited, telling them about a woman I had helped through my nonprofit, how we found her a safe place after weeks of living in her car. I thought they would be proud. My mother sighed and shook her head. Why waste your energy on strangers, Claire? You should focus on yourself. Before I could reply, Ava tilted her head and said sweetly, That's just Claire, always taking on other people's problems. Everyone laughed and I laughed too, pretending it was funny, but inside I felt myself shrinking. The truth was Ava did not admire me. She envied me. I did not see it clearly back then, but I see it now. She resented the freedom I had to follow my own path, even when our parents disapproved. She had always obeyed, always been the daughter who said yes, but in the quiet moments, I caught her eyes on me with something sharp behind them. Once after, I turned down a promotion because it would pull me away from my projects, she muttered under her breath. Must be nice, not caring what people think. I brushed it off at the time, but the tone stayed with me. And there were birthdays. My own would pass almost unnoticed, maybe a short text or a single card. But Ava's birthday was an event, a dinner gifts, wrapped in bright paper laughter, circling the table, while Mum fussed over her. I used to tell myself it did not matter, that I was stronger, that I did not need that kind of attention. But in moments like this, sitting alone, I realised how much those small differences had cut into me over the years. I was always the responsible one, the strong one, the one who would manage without help. Ava was the fragile one, the delicate one who needed constant protection. And because of that, she was rewarded with affection and patience, while I was expected to give and give until I was empty. As the memories piled up, the picture became painfully clear. They wanted a daughter who followed orders. That was Ava. They wanted a daughter who carried burdens without complaint. That was me. But only one of us was ever rewarded. I sat back and let out a long breath. My chest ached, but my mind was sharper than before. This wedding exclusion was not a single act of cruelty. It was the natural end of a pattern that had been running my whole life. Ava had the smile, the sweetness, the role of the good daughter. I had the backbone, the responsibility, and for that, I was left out. I wiped my eyes and steadied my voice, speaking only to myself. If I am always the one left out, then maybe it is time to step out for myself. The thought circled in my head quiet. At first, then louder with every breath. For so long, I had lived as the dependable one, the fixer, the strong daughter who never needed anything. But now, sitting in the silence of my apartment, I realised strength had only earned me dismissal. I looked around me. On the desk sat piles of papers from my non-profit work. Notes about families who needed housing requests for food, drives, volunteers to coordinate. It was the kind of work that mattered, work I had given my heart to for years. Yet staring at the stacks, a question rose in me sharper than I expected. Years healing others who ever healed me. The answer came fast. No one. I was the one expected to give, never to ask. I turned to my chair and reached for my laptop. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. At first, I had no idea what I was about to do. But then, I typed 2 words. Caribbean resorts. The screen filled with images of ocean water so clear, it looked like glass of white sand of balconies overlooking endless blue. I almost laughed. This was not for people like me, I thought. It was too much, too indulgent. But then, another thought pressed in. Ava's wedding with its grand hall, its hundreds of guests, its endless excuses about cost. They had money for that, but not a seat for me. I felt something shift. I clicked through options, my heart racing. The longer I looked, the stronger the urge became. For once in my life, I would not wait to be chosen. I would choose. I selected a 5-star package, all-inclusive ocean view suite. My hand trembled as I typed in my information. When the confirmation screen appeared, I sat frozen. Then slowly I smiled. This time, I choose me. The suitcase in the corner caught my eye. It had been months since I used it. I stood, pulled it out, and began to lay out clothes. It felt strange packing not for someone else's needs, but for my own joy. I took a photo of the suitcase and opened my social media app. My fingers typed before my doubt could stop me. Cut from the list. I'll choose the world instead. I posted it, then added another message, a sharper one meant for those who thought I was overreacting. Sorry, I'm a little busy enjoying my overreaction. Hope the wedding was fun. I hit share and sat back, my heart pounding. For a moment, I was afraid. Afraid of how my mother might respond, of how Ava might sneer, of how the family might gossip. But then, the fear gave way to something lighter. Relief. I had drawn a line not in whispers but in bold letters. For once, I was not shrinking to fit their story of me. I closed my laptop and looked at the printed confirmation sitting on the desk. Flight to the Caribbean Hotel, booking all under my name. Proof that I could claim something beautiful for myself. I whispered into the quiet. This is not running away. This is finally running toward myself. The room felt different now, not heavy but open. I folded the papers, slipped them into my bag, and zipped the suitcase shut. When I lifted it, the weight felt right in my hands. A first step, small and yet the biggest I had taken in years. That night I lay in bed, the glow of the screen still beside me. Notifications began to pop up. A cousin sent laughing emojis. An aunt commented good for you. A few friends messaged half envious, half proud. I smiled though my chest still ached. This was not about showing off. It was about surviving. About proving to myself that I was more than the shadow my family kept me in. I closed my eyes with the image of the ocean in my mind. Tomorrow, I would be on my way. For once, the world was mine to choose. That thought carried me through the night, and by the time I boarded the plane, I felt lighter than I had in years. Hours later, when the wheels touched down in the Caribbean, I stepped out into air that wrapped around me like a welcome. The breeze smelled of salt and flowers, warm and soft against my skin. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. A driver waited with my name on a card, smiling as if I were someone important. He handed me a chilled towel, a bottle of water, and led me to a sleek car. As we drove along the coast, I stared at the endless blue of the ocean, the sunlight glittering across the waves, and I thought, this is not running away, this is arriving. When we pulled into the resort, I felt as though I had stepped into another world. The lobby was open to the sea air, palm trees rising inside, and the first thing they offered me was a sweet, cold drink in a glass that sparkled. I almost laughed at the irony. At home, I was not worth a seat at my sister's wedding. Here I was, treated as if I were a guest of honour. When they opened the door to my suite, my breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the ocean. A private balcony stretched toward the horizon, and in the centre stood the most inviting bed I had ever seen. I set down my bag and whispered to myself, here I am, a VIP guest at home. I wasn't even guest enough. I stood there for a long moment, taking it in, then walked out onto the balcony. The ocean moved in slow rhythm below me, each wave rolling in with a sound that seemed to wash some of the heaviness from my chest. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birds and sunlight spilling across the room. Room service arrived with a tray that smelled like heaven pancakes, soft as clouds, slices of mango and papaya glistening with juice and coffee, so rich the scent alone lifted me. I sat by the window, with my plate the ocean spread wide in front of me, and I let myself linger. No rushing to fix anyone's problem, no being called dramatic, no sighs from my mother telling me I was too much. Just me and the quiet pleasure of a meal I did not have to earn. As I ate, I thought of home. I thought of the way my family brushed me aside, the way they laughed when I was the one who carried their burdens. I thought of Ava, the good daughter, the chosen one, and how easily I had been cut out. Then I looked down at my coffee, strong and dark, and realised strangers had already given me more kindness than my own blood had in years. All it took was a plane ticket for me to see my worth clearer than I ever did at home. Later that day, I stretched out by the infinity pool, A cool drink in my hand, the sun warm on my face. The sound of the ocean mixed with the laughter of other travellers, but I felt no envy, no weight in my chest. For the first time in years, my shoulders rested without tension. My body felt different, as if it remembered what it meant to breathe without carrying everyone else's pain. I leaned back and closed my eyes, smiling at the simple truth I felt light. As the sun dropped toward the horizon, I sat on the balcony again, watching the sky turn gold and pink over the water. The waves rolled in steady and sure, and I thought about the door my family had closed. They had left me out, but I had stepped through another doorway, one I opened myself. They closed me off. But here I was free. They gave me no seat, but here I had the best view in the house. I lifted my glass toward the horizon and whispered, "They closed one door on me, I opened another, and it led here." A smile spread across my face, soft and certain. For once, peace was mine to claim. I leaned back in the lounge chair, the glass still cool in my hand. The ocean spread wide before me. I let the sound of the waves carry me, the kind of sound that makes you forget where you end and the world begins. Then, my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first. Nothing was going to pull me away from this moment. But then, it buzzed again and again until the table rattled with the vibrations. With a sigh, I reached for it, certain it was just a message from a friend who had seen my post. But when I turned the screen over, I froze. 50 missed calls. I blinked, thinking I must have read it wrong. The list stretched on and on. Mum, Ava, cousins, numbers I didn't recognize. I scrolled through them, my stomach tightening. Then came the voicemails. I tapped one. My mother's voice filled the air, frantic, higher than I had ever heard it. "Claire, call me right now, it's an emergency." Another voicemail. Ava sobbing so hard her words broke apart. "I don't understand why you're doing this. I need you. Please, pick up." I almost dropped the phone. They had shut me out of the wedding, dismissed me, like I was nothing. And now suddenly, I was the person they needed. I kept listening, almost against my better judgment. A distant uncle's voice muttering something about family crisis. Another relative begging me to come home. The more I listened, the more absurd it felt, as if the universe was pulling some kind of cruel joke. Days ago, I wasn't worth a seat at the table. Now I was their lifeline. I tapped the screen again and saw messages. Jake, my cousin, always the clown. His text read, "Bro, where even are you? You won't believe what's happening." I shook my head, almost smiling despite myself. Typical Jake. But then, I saw Melissa's message. "Claire, you really need to call me. It's important. I read it twice." Melissa was not the type to exaggerate. If she said it mattered, it did. Still, I didn't hit call. Instead, I sat back, phone in my lap, staring at the sea. I knew this rhythm too well. When Ava had meltdowns when relatives fought, when someone made a scene at a family gathering, I was the one they leaned on. I was the fixer, the firefighter, the one who always knew how to calm the storm. And now, here it was again, the storm reaching across miles to drag me back in. I thought of the message Ava had sent just days ago. Tough cuts. Hope you understand. And my mother's voice dismissing me like a child. "It's just a wedding. Don't make a big deal out of this." Yet here they were, begging, calling desperate. My laugh came out sharp and bitter. I wasn't good enough to be invited, but I was good enough to clean up the wreckage. I placed the phone face down on the table, the buzzing still trembling against the wood. I lifted my drink and took a slow sip, letting the ocean's rhythm drown out the sound. If they wanted me silent, they got what they asked for. Now they could taste what life was like without me there to hold it together. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for ignoring them. I felt free. I leaned back in the chair by the pool, the salt breeze soft against my skin, a cocktail cool in my hand. I closed my eyes and let the sound of the ocean wash over me, but before long my phone buzzed again. I sighed and reached to silence it, but then a different kind of alert flashed across the screen. It wasn't another call. It was a trending notification. Ava's wedding. My chest tightened. I tapped the screen almost without thinking, and suddenly I was staring at a shaky video posted on TikTok. The caption read, "Craziest wedding I've ever been to." My heart raced as I pressed play. The first thing I saw was Tyler Ava's groom storming across the reception hall, his face red with anger. He was shouting, though the music drowned his words, and then he ripped off his boutonniere and threw it to the floor. Gasps filled the room. Ava's voice cut through, high and raw, screaming his name as she lunged after him. He turned his back and walked straight out the doors. The camera shook as guests scrambled to follow, but the clip ended there. My mouth fell open. I whispered the words out loud before I could stop myself. Did the groom leave? I scrolled quickly, my fingers almost shaking, and more videos appeared. One showed Ava collapsing into a chair, sobbing, while her bridesmaids tried to hold her up. Another captured Aunt Lisa and Uncle Rob, screaming at each other in the corner, pointing fingers about who was to blame. In the background, I saw my grandmother sitting with her hands pressed over her face, her shoulders shaking. The DJ cut the music mid-song, and the chatter turned into a roar. People were filming, whispering, spreading it online in real time. I sat there in the Caribbean sun, frozen between shock and dark amusement. The wedding I wasn't good enough to attend was unraveling in front of thousands of strangers. I almost laughed. They had cut me out to preserve appearances, and now their humiliation was public, permanent, impossible to hide. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a message from Melissa. I opened it quickly. Her words made me let out a sharp breath. The groom simply walked out. "It's a disaster. You dodged a bullet." A second message followed. "I wish you could see this. Actually, maybe it's better you don't." I looked down at the cocktail in my hand and then back at my phone, a smirk tugging at my lips. "Oh, Melissa, I thought I've already seen everything." More videos kept flooding in. Ava screaming at her bridesmaids, her makeup streaked down her face. My mother clutching her pearls, trying to smile for the cameras while whispering frantically into her phone. Guests shaking their heads, filming from every angle. I shook my head slowly, the bitter taste of irony filling my mouth. All those years they leaned on me to put out their fires. And the one time they pushed me out, the whole house burned down. I set the phone down on my lap, staring at the sky. For a moment, pity crept in. I thought of Ava in her dress, the one she must have chosen months ago, the way she probably imagined herself glowing perfect, envied. And instead, she was a trending video, a cautionary tale. But then, I remembered the message she had sent me. Tough cuts. Hope you understand. And my mother's voice saying, "It's just a wedding. Don't make a big deal out of this." The laugh that came out of me was sharp, almost shocking, in the quiet of the poolside. I couldn't help it. The justice of it all, the way it had flipped, was too much. I lifted my glass in a toast, not to Ava, not to Tyler, not to the family that had cast me out, but to the truth finally showing itself. They wanted a perfect day without me. Now the world knew how perfect that turned out. I leaned back, the sun warm on my face, the phone buzzing again and again on the table. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I took a slow sip of my drink and let the waves roll in steady and sure. For once, the chaos wasn't mine to carry. I told myself that as I leaned back in my chair, sipping from my glass, watching the sun drop lower over the ocean. My phone sat face down on the table, still buzzing every few minutes, but I ignored it. I had decided I was free. Then, one name lit across the screen and I hesitated. Melissa. She wasn't like the others. She didn't stir up drama for fun, and she didn't chase me only when she needed something. If she was still calling after all this time, it meant there was more I needed to know. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Her voice rushed out urgent. "Claire, you need to hear this. It's worse than you think." My pulse quickened. I thought I had already seen the worst, the groom walking out. Ava, screaming relatives fighting in front of a crowd of strangers with phones. But Melissa's tone told me the spectacle was only the surface. I leaned forward, my drink forgotten, and said, "Tell me." Melissa let out a breath and began. She told me that weeks before the wedding, Tyler had started planting seeds in Ava's mind. He convinced her I would ruin everything. He told her I was jealous, that I always wanted the attention on me, that I would embarrass her in front of everyone. He made her believe that if she wanted to prove she was loyal to him, she had to cut me out. My chest tightened as Melissa repeated the words he had used. If you love me, pick me over her. I closed my eyes. It wasn't just Ava choosing. It was Tyler's hand guiding her, turning her insecurity into a weapon. And she let him. She had wanted to believe I was the enemy, so she listened. But that wasn't all. Melissa went on, her voice dropping as if she were sharing something too heavy to carry alone. At the reception, before Tyler stormed out, an old friend of his showed up. Someone who knew him before he met Ava. That friend confronted him in front of people, said he was hiding debts, that he owed money all over town, that he had another woman he'd been seeing on the side. The words spread like fire. Guests started whispering, the bridesmaids panicked, and Tyler snapped. That was why he walked out. Not because of a fight in the moment, but because the truth caught up to him. I sat back in my chair, my breath leaving me in a long exhale. So that was it. The perfect groom, the perfect day, the perfect family image, all of it built on lies. And when the lies cracked, everything fell apart. But what came next hurt more than any of it. Melissa's voice softened, almost apologetic. Claire, you weren't left off the list because of money, or space, or any of the excuses they gave. You were left out because they knew you would see through him. You're the only one who could have exposed it before the wedding even happened. They thought if you were there, you'd ruin it by telling the truth. My stomach twisted. It all made cruel sense. She hesitated, before adding one last blow. And your mother? She helped cover it. She told people you were too busy with work to come, that you cared more about your non-profit than your own sister. That's why some of the relatives turned cold on you. They thought you chose not to show up. I pressed a hand to my face, fighting the sting in my eyes. Betrayal from Ava was one thing, but my own mother twisting the knife to protect appearances, that was another wound altogether. It wasn't just that they didn't value me. It was that they feared me. They knew my honesty was dangerous to their lives, and they decided the wedding mattered more than I did. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. I stared out at the horizon, watching the sun sink into the water. The waves kept coming steady and endless, as if mocking the storm inside me. Finally, I found my voice low, but steady. So it was never about cuts. It was about control. They didn't cut me because I didn't matter. They cut me because I mattered too much. Melissa was silent, then whispered, I'm so sorry, Claire. You didn't deserve this. I swallowed hard and said thank you for telling me. At least now I know the truth. We said goodbye, and I set the phone back on the table. My hands trembled slightly, but my jaw was set. The hurt ran deep, but with it came clarity. They had chosen lies over me, and now those lies had destroyed them. I lifted my glass again. The ice melted the taste sharper now. I whispered into the evening air, let them drown in the mess they protected. I won't carry it anymore. I thought those words would be the end of it. I thought I had finally drawn a clean line. I set my phone aside and let the quiet settle in the ocean, rolling steady in the distance. But before long, the screen lit up again. This time, it wasn't frantic calls or tearful voicemails. It was messages. I glanced at them without meaning to, and my breath caught. The first text was from my aunt. How could you abandon your sister on her wedding day? I blinked, confused, and opened the next. A cousin. You were always selfish, but this is too far. Then another. Claire family comes first. What kind of person chooses work over her own sister? My stomach dropped. One after another, the words stacked on the screen like stones on my chest. Not one of them asked me what happened. Not one of them cared to hear my side. They had already decided. I scrolled back and read the words again, my heart pounding. Work. That was the word repeated in every accusation. I cared more about work than family. My hand shook as the realization hit me. My mother. She had told them. She must have told them I was too busy with my non-profit to be at Ava's wedding. She had painted me as the cold sister, the career-obsessed woman who turned her back on her family. It wasn't enough that they cut me out. They had to rewrite the story to make me the villain. I set the phone down hard on the table, the glass beside it rattling. Betrayal I could take. Exclusion I had lived with for years. But being slandered, being made into the one who abandoned them, cut deeper than I expected. I felt like the ground had shifted under me. I whispered to myself so they threw me out, then told the world I walked away. They broke the glass and handed me the blame for the shards. The old pull rose in me, the same one I had felt since childhood. The urge to call, to explain, to defend myself until the air ran out of my lungs. I imagined picking up the phone and shouting the truth, that I was never invited, that Ava had cut me off under Tyler's pressure, that my mother had lied to cover her pride. But even as the thought burned in me, another voice pushed through. Would they even listen? Had they ever listened? I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to steady the ache. For a moment, the resort around me faded. I could hear only their voices in my head. The cousins nodding, the aunts whispering, my mother shaking her head with that same tired sigh. Claire always puts herself first. Claire never makes time for family. The lies fit too neatly into the story they already told themselves about me. That was the cruelest part. I realized it wasn't only Tyler they had believed. It wasn't only Ava's choice. It was years of seeing me as the one who didn't measure up. I stood and walked to the edge of the balcony, staring out at the water. The waves moved without pause, endless, unconcerned. I wanted to borrow that strength, to let the noise roll off me the way the tide rolled over the sand, but my chest still hurt. The isolation pressed in sharper than ever. Here I was in paradise, surrounded by beauty, and yet a part of me felt utterly alone. Even from miles away, they had managed to cut me again. I picked up my phone once more just to see. Another text. This one from a distant cousin I barely knew. Family is everything. I can't believe you didn't show up. I laughed bitterly, though it came out closer to a sob. I had been ready to walk away clean, and now they dragged me back into the fire with their words. Finally, I set the phone down harder this time, and slid it across the table until it faced away from me. I poured the last of my drink into my glass and whispered, if they would rather believe lies than hear my truth, then let them. Their knife cut me deep, but I won't bleed for them anymore. I raised the glass, my hand steady now, and took a long sip. The bitterness lingered on my tongue, but beneath it came a quiet resolve. I was done fighting for a place in their story. I would write my own. Those words had stayed with me like a quiet vow, a line I had drawn deep inside myself. In the days that followed, I tried to live by them. I woke up each morning to the sound of waves instead of raised voices. I lingered over breakfast on the balcony sipping coffee without looking at the screen lighting up beside me. The calls and messages stacked into the dozens, then into the 50s, but I let them pile up untouched. It felt strange at first, almost guilty, but as time went on, I realized how different my body felt without the constant weight of family demands. I could breathe. I could sleep. I could taste food instead of swallowing it in a rush. For once, I belonged fully to myself. By the third day, the resort felt like another world. I swam in the ocean, let the salt cling to my skin, then lay under the sun until I was drowsy and warm. I strolled through the little town nearby, bought fresh fruit from a stand, listened to music, drifting from open windows. Each night, I returned to my room, set my phone face down, and told myself I had survived another day without being pulled back into the storm. It was working, or so I thought. That evening, just as I was getting ready for dinner, a sound broke the calm, a knock at my door. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe housekeeping, maybe someone from the resort. But the knock came again, louder this time, with a rhythm that carried insistence. I froze, the brush still in my hand. Something about it felt different. I set the brush down, walked slowly to the door, and pressed my hand to the handle. My heart beat faster, as if it already knew. When I pulled the door open, I nearly stumbled back. Standing there, her shoulders slumped from travel, was my mother, Linda. She looked older than I remembered her face drawn, her eyes shadowed, her clothes wrinkled from the flight. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The last thing I'd expected was for her to come all this way to cross the ocean just to find me. Finally, she broke the silence. "Claire," she said, her voice rough from exhaustion but still carrying that sharp edge I knew so well. "Enough hiding. Your sister is shattered. You have to come back with me." The words landed like a heavy weight, and I stood there gripping the doorframe, stunned. Even here, even thousands of miles from home, she was trying to drag me back. Her tone was not gentle, not even pleading. It was commanding, like I had no choice in the matter. For years that tone had worked on me. It had bent me, pushed me, worn me down. But not now. I drew a slow breath, steadying myself. "No, Mom," I said, my voice firm, though my heart raced. "I chose me this time. And I won't fix what you broke." Her eyes narrowed, hurt, flashing behind them, but she pressed on. "You don't understand," she insisted, stepping closer as if she could push me back with her presence. "Ava can't recover from this without you. She's devastated. She needs her sister." I shook my head, my hand tightening on the door. "She made sure I wasn't there when it mattered. She chose him over me. And you chose appearances over me. You told people I was too busy with work to care. You turned them against me to save face. And now, you want me to come back and clean up your mess." She flinched, but then her mouth set hard. "You're twisting this, Claire. Families make mistakes, but when there's a crisis, we come together. That's what you've always done. You've always been the one we could count on." The words might have warmed me once. They might have made me proud to be needed, but now they sounded like chains. I met her gaze, my voice low and steady. "That's the problem, Mum. You only count on me when everything is falling apart, but when I needed you, when I needed fairness, you shrugged and told me it was just a wedding. When I asked for a place at my sister's side, you told me not to make a fuss. You can't erase that with desperation now." Her face crumpled for a moment, her exhaustion showing through. She looked at me as if she didn't recognize me, as if the daughter who had always bent to her was gone, and maybe I was. Maybe I finally was. "Claire, please," she whispered, and for the first time her voice lost its edge. "I don't know what else to do. Your sister is breaking. The family is tearing itself apart. If you don't come back, I don't know how we'll survive this." My chest ached, but I held her gaze. "You'll survive the way you always should have, by facing the truth, without me cleaning up after you. Ava made her choices. You made yours, and now I'm making mine." She stared at me, her lips trembling, as if she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother falter, truly falter, in front of me. The silence between us felt heavy, but underneath it I felt something else, freedom. I took a small step back, my hand on the door. "I'm not your safety net anymore," I said softly. "Not hers either. If you came all this way for that, then you came for nothing." Her eyes filled, though she blinked hard to stop the tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't let her. I slowly, firmly closed the door. The latch clicked into place, and I leaned against it, my heart pounding, my breath shaky. On the other side, I imagined her standing there stunned, maybe angry, maybe broken. But I didn't move. For once, the door stayed closed. I slid down against it, pressing my palms flat to the floor. The ache in my chest was real, but so was the strength. I whispered to myself almost like a prayer. For once, I didn't cave. For once, I wasn't their safety net. The door stayed closed, and I leaned against it, with my heart racing but steady. Those words echoed inside me as the hours turned into days. I let myself slip back into the rhythm of the island. Mornings filled with soft breezes and the hum of waves. Afternoons stretched under the sun, my phone left untouched, the missed calls climbing into the 50s, and then more. I stopped counting. I had chosen myself, and with every sunrise I felt lighter. But while I was letting go, the storm back home was still raging. I didn't see it firsthand, but I heard pieces from Melissa, and later I pieced the rest together. The family had gathered again this time, not for celebration, but to lick their wounds. Ava sat in the living room, still in shock, still replaying the moment her groom walked out, her mascara-stained face buried in her hands. My mother pacing the carpet, snapping at anyone who dared question her decisions. The relatives whispering, some angry, some embarrassed, all of them looking for someone to blame. The air was thick with tension, and it would have gone on endlessly if one voice hadn't cut through. Grandma Ruth, my grandmother, who rarely raised her voice but whose words always landed sharp. She had listened long enough to their excuses, their finger pointing their denial. Then she stood her cane, tapping the floor, and in a voice that carried across the room, she said, "Cast out your eldest, and blessings will cast you out too." The room froze. Her words hung in the air like a bell still ringing. No one spoke, not even my mother. Grandma went on telling them that by treating me as if I didn't matter, they had cursed the very day they claimed they wanted to protect. She said Ava's wedding was doomed the moment they decided appearances were worth more than fairness, worth more than family. Her blunt truth silenced the house. For once, they had no answer. I didn't hear those words in person, but Melissa told me later, almost with awe in her voice, how the room went still. And when I imagined it, I felt something inside me ease. Justice didn't need me to speak it. It came from the one person in that house who had never been afraid to call out wrong when she saw it. My grandmother had carried the truth into the room and dropped it at their feet, and no one could sweep it away. Meanwhile, in my hotel room, I sat watching the ocean through the glass. My phone buzzed again, Ava's name lighting the screen. I almost ignored it, as I had ignored all the others, but something made me open it. The messages spilled out long paragraphs filled with desperation. "Claire, please, I need you. I can't do this without you. Everyone is against me. Please, come back. Please answer me." I read each word slowly, feeling the irony bite at me. The same sister who had cut me off so easily was now begging for the very presence she once threw away. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Then, I began to type. My hands were steady, my heart clear. "The day you cut me off was the day I cut you from my heart. Now, there's no place for you in it." I read it once, twice, knowing it was the truth. I needed to speak. Then, I pressed send, and as soon as it left my phone, I blocked her number. I imagined her seeing it, the shock spreading across her face, the silence that must have filled the room when she realized I would not be her savior. I imagined my mother trying to defend her choices, only to falter under my grandmother's words still ringing in everyone's ears. For years, they had controlled the story, painted me as selfish, dramatic, too difficult. But now, the story was breaking apart in their hands, and I no longer had to fight for my place in it. I set the phone aside and leaned back, listening to the ocean through the open balcony door. A strange calm settled over me. Vindication. That was the word that came closest, though. It didn't capture the full weight of it. It wasn't joy at their suffering. It wasn't revenge. It was the quiet relief of knowing that the truth had finally spoken for itself, louder than their lies, louder than their excuses. I whispered to myself, they finally heard the truth, and I didn't have to raise my voice to speak it. For once, I wasn't scrambling to explain, to patch, to soothe. I wasn't bending myself into the shape they wanted. I was simply here, intact, whole, untouched by their storm. The night fell softly around me, and I sat with the certainty that the curse of unfairness had finally come back to them. Not because I fought, but because I walked away. And in walking away, I had found something stronger than their approval. I had found my own peace. Those words carried me into the next days, and for the first time in years, I felt steady. My mornings began with the slow roll of waves drifting through the open balcony door. I would sit with a cup of coffee, not rushing anywhere, not waiting for anyone to hand me another burden. My phone sat on the table, still filling with calls and messages, but I kept it face down. I didn't need to know. Not yet. On the third evening, when the sun was just beginning to paint the sky, I heard it ring again. I almost ignored it like always, but when I turned it over, the name on the screen made me pause. Melissa. She was different. She never called unless there was something real to say. I let it ring once more, then answered. Her voice came warm and direct. Claire, you were right all along. Without you, they finally saw who holds the family together. I didn't answer right away. I let her words settle. She kept talking, telling me how Grandma Ruth had stood in the living room and silenced everyone with her truth. How Ava had cried harder than ever, how my mother had tried to defend herself but faltered. How the relatives had finally stopped pretending and admitted that I had always been the one keeping things from falling apart. Melissa's tone was firm, almost proud. She wanted me to know that the story had changed. For a moment, the old Paul rose inside me. The part of me that had always rushed in, always tried to fix, always believed that if I just explained one more time, if I just worked a little harder, they would finally see me clearly. My chest ached with it. I could almost hear my mother's voice through Melissa's words. The same tired plea, come back, we need you. But then I breathed. I looked around me at the room, at the soft curtains swaying in the breeze, at the sound of the sea, steady and endless. I thought about the choice I had already made. I realized that Melissa's call wasn't asking me to return. It was giving me confirmation. The truth had spoken without me. I didn't need to rush back into the fire, so I said, thank you for telling me. I'm glad they heard it. And then gently I ended the call. I placed the phone face down on the table again and left it there. I whispered to myself, I don't need to fix their mess. Not anymore. I walked out onto the balcony. The sky was burning with colour gold and pink fading into deep blue. The sea stretched wide, unbothered, rolling the same as it had yesterday and the same as it would tomorrow. I leaned against the railing, letting the air fill my lungs. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next crisis. I wasn't bracing for the next demand. I picked up my laptop, opened it slowly, and clicked through the pages to extend my stay. One more week, maybe longer. The confirmation flashed on the screen and I smiled. I had always told myself I didn't have the time or the right to do something like this. But now I saw it clearly. This was mine to choose. I set the laptop aside and stayed with the sunset. I thought about Ava, about the way she had pushed me away, about the desperation in her last messages. I thought about my mother standing at my door, still trying to pull me back with guilt. I thought about all the times I had said yes when my heart was screaming no, and I let them all drift out with the tide. I whispered softly, not for anyone else to hear, but only for myself. I'm no longer the family's shadow. I am me, and that is enough. The words settled in my chest, not sharp, not heavy, but warm. Like a stone finally placed where it belonged. I stayed there until the light faded, until the stars began to prick the sky, until the sound of the waves felt like a promise. I had walked through betrayal, through blame, through the knife of their lies, and I had come out whole. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their stage. I didn't need to be the one who held them up. For once, I was free to hold myself. And as the night settled over the sea, I felt certain of one thing. This was only the beginning. Because peace is not something we stumble upon once and never lose again. It's something we choose every single day, even when it hurts. Maybe you've been in a place like mine where family or friends or people you trusted made you feel invisible. Maybe you've carried their burdens so long that you forgot your own worth. And maybe, like me, you reached a point where the only way forward was to stop trying to earn a place in someone else's story and finally write your own. It's not easy. Walking away rarely is. But the truth is, we do not heal by begging others to see us. we heal by learning to see ourselves clearly. Some find it in quiet mornings, with a journal, letting the words spill out. Some find it in long walks where the air clears the heaviness in their chest. Some in therapy, in prayer, in meditation, or in simply choosing to rest when the world demands more. Healing looks different for each of us, but the first step is the same. We have to believe we are worth it. Worth peace. Worth kindness. Worth love. So if you're listening right now and carrying a pain like mine, I want you to hear this. You are not alone. You are not selfish for needing space. And you are not wrong for choosing yourself, even if others don't understand. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is close the door, take a breath and whisper, I am enough. Thank you for spending this time with me, for walking through the storm and the calm. If this story touched you, and if you'd like to hear more stories like it, stories about life, love, loss, and finding ourselves again, I invite you to stay connected. You can subscribe here so that when the next story comes, you'll be here to listen with me. No pressure, just an open door. Until then, may you find your peace wherever you are.